2:10 a.m. on a Sunday morning. The Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. 38 years after the worst nuclear disaster in human history, the zone is quiet. The dead Earth, the abandoned buildings, the rusted Ferris wheel in Pripyat, and the centralized spent nuclear fuel storage facility, a building designed to hold some of the most dangerous material on Earth. At 2:10 a.m., a Russian Shahed-136 drone crossed into the exclusion zone. Not a missile, not a military aircraft, a cheap, one-way attack drone. The same weapon that has terrorized Ukrainian cities for years, the same weapon that costs between $20,000 and $50,000 to manufacture. The drone struck the container reception building of the spent fuel storage facility. The impact partially destroyed the structure. A fire broke out, covering approximately 40 square meters. The building is located just meters away from large amounts of nuclear material, spent fuel, highly radioactive, extremely dangerous if exposed to fire or impact. The fire was extinguished within an hour. No radiation spike was detected. No spent fuel was inside the damaged building at the time of the attack. But here's what the official statements are not telling you, and that silence should keep you up tonight. Before I show you exactly what this attack means, and why a Shahed drone striking meters from nuclear material is not an accident, hit subscribe. This is war conflict. I post forensic analysis of every major escalation, and this is the one that proves Russia is playing with fire that could burn all of Europe. Let me start with what is confirmed and what is not, because transparency matters. On June 7, 2026, at approximately 2:10 a.m. local time, a Russian Shahed drone struck the centralized spent nuclear fuel storage facility in the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. The target was the container reception building, a support structure used for receiving and processing spent fuel storage containers before they are transferred to the main storage area. The strike partially destroyed the structure and sparked a fire covering approximately 40 square meters. The fire was extinguished within an hour. No spent nuclear fuel was stored inside the damaged building at the time of the attack. Radiation levels at the facility remained within established safety limits. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed that the strike caused significant damage to the facility's fuel reception building, including to the facade, windows, and doors, and nearby buildings were also affected by the blast wave. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi described the attack as deeply concerning and stated that the facility contains large amounts of nuclear material held in storage just meters away from the attacked building. He also said, "Attacking a facility with large amounts of nuclear material is like playing with fire, and it must never happen." Russia has not publicly commented on the attack. What is analysis? The full extent of the structural damage continues to be assessed by IAEA inspectors. Whether this was a deliberate targeting of nuclear infrastructure or a navigation error remains disputed. But the wreckage of a Shahed drone was found at the scene, confirming the weapon type. Here's what you need to understand before we go further. This is not the first time Russia has struck Chernobyl infrastructure. In February 2025, a Russian drone damaged the new Safe Confinement arch over the destroyed reactor number 4. That strike created a hole of approximately 15 square meters and total damage of about 200 square meters. Repairs have not been completed. The protective functions of the sarcophagus have not been fully restored. And now, Russia has struck again, this time meters away from large amounts of nuclear material. Let me explain what the centralized spent nuclear fuel storage facility actually is, because most coverage of this story has completely failed to communicate why this target matters. The facility, known by its Ukrainian acronym TSSVYAP, is located approximately 15 kilometers from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, near the settlement of Buryakivka in Kyiv Oblast. It is Ukraine's primary storage site for spent nuclear fuel from the country's nuclear power plants. Here is what is stored there. Spent nuclear fuel removed from operating reactors. Fuel that remains intensely radioactive for decades. Fuel that, if exposed to fire or impact, could release radioactive material into the environment. The facility uses dry cask storage technology, developed with American company Holtec International. Spent fuel assemblies are sealed inside large steel and concrete containers designed to withstand extreme conditions. Each container is heavily shielded. They do not require active cooling. But here is the detail that changes everything. The building that was struck is not the primary storage area. It is the container reception building, where incoming fuel casks are processed before being placed in permanent storage positions. It is a functional support structure. And at the time of the attack, no spent fuel was inside the damaged building. However, and this is the critical point that IAEA Director General Grossi emphasized, the facility contains large amounts of nuclear material held in storage just meters away from the attacked building. Meters away. Not kilometers, not miles. Meters. The blast wave from the Shahed's explosion affected nearby buildings. The IAEA confirmed that nearby buildings were also affected by the blast wave. The safeguards office housed in the facility also sustained damage. A Shahed-136 carries a warhead of approximately 40 to 50 kilograms of high explosives, enough to destroy a building, crater a road, or, if it hit a dry cask storage container, potentially breach its shielding. The strike missed the nuclear material by meters. A navigation error? A deliberate targeting of the facility but not the fuel? Or a warning shot designed to show that Russia can reach Chernobyl's nuclear infrastructure at will? The silence from Moscow does not answer these questions. But the physical evidence, the wreckage of a Shahed drone found at the scene, tells us that this was not a Ukrainian false flag. This was a Russian weapon, confirmed by identification of Shahed wreckage at the site. This is not the first time Russia has struck Chernobyl infrastructure. And understanding the previous attack is essential to understanding why this one matters. On February 14, 2025, a Russian Geran-2 drone, a derivative of the Shahed, struck the new Safe Confinement structure at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The new Safe Confinement is a $2.2 billion steel arch completed in 2019 with funding from 45 countries. It was designed to contain the radioactive remains of reactor number 4, which exploded in 1986. The drone created a hole in the protective shell of approximately 15 square meters. The total area of damage reached about 200 square meters. Shrapnel from the explosion pierced the shell in many places. The IAEA confirmed the strike and subsequently determined that the structure had lost its primary safety functions, including confinement capability. The protective functions of the sarcophagus could not be fully restored after the strike, which increased the risk of radioactive substances leaking into the environment, especially in the event of a collapse. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot estimated repair costs at approximately $550 million. G7 foreign ministers later projected restoration costs at approximately $575 million. And as of April 2026, comprehensive restoration remained incomplete. The new Safe Confinement was designed to maintain humidity levels below 40% to prevent metal corrosion. After the strike, the structure lost its hermetic seal and can no longer maintain the required humidity level. Dismantling the original sarcophagus, which contains tons of highly radioactive nuclear fuel, dust, and debris, is impossible without repairing the protective structure. Eric Schmeemann, an engineer who worked on the design and construction of the new Safe Confinement, gave a devastating assessment. My colleagues and I spent years investigating inside the ruins of Chernobyl Reactor 4. We designed and built the new Safe Confinement to protect the environment and people of Ukraine and Europe. It is urgent that all measures are taken to find a way to restore as much of the critical functions of the facility as possible. A Greenpeace report, which will be submitted to the Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine as independent evidence of Russian war crimes, warned that the sarcophagus at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant requires urgent dismantling, yet damage to its protective structure has rendered the process currently impossible, significantly escalating the risk of collapse. Now, 16 months later, Russia has struck Chernobyl again. This time, meters away from large amounts of nuclear material. The pattern is clear. The question is not whether Russia is targeting nuclear infrastructure. The question is what they are trying to achieve, and how close they will come next time. Let me explain what the Shahed-136 is, because understanding the weapon helps understand the attack. The Shahed-136 is an Iranian-designed one-way attack drone that Russia has been manufacturing under license and deploying in large numbers since late 2022. It has a distinctive delta-wing design, a piston engine that produces a characteristic lawnmower sound, and a warhead typically in the range of 40 to 50 kilograms. It has been used to strike power stations, heating infrastructure, water treatment facilities, and civilian residential areas across Ukraine in mass overnight attacks involving dozens or hundreds of drones simultaneously. The Shahed is not a precision weapon. Its guidance system uses GPS and inertial navigation, with an accuracy measured in meters rather than centimeters. It is designed to hit area targets, buildings, infrastructure, fuel depots, not specific windows or doors. But the Shahed is also cheap. Cost estimates range from $20,000 to $50,000 per unit. That is a fraction of what Ukraine spends on air defense interceptors. For comparison, a Patriot interceptor missile costs approximately $4 million. An Iris-T interceptor costs approximately $500,000. The cost-exchange ratio is devastating. Russia spends $50,000 on a Shahed. Ukraine spends $500,000 to shoot it down. And if even one Shahed gets through, it can destroy infrastructure worth millions. At Chernobyl, the Shahed got through. The wreckage of a Shahed-type drone was found at the scene of the fire. Physical wreckage of the type identified has been documented and confirmed at dozens of Ukrainian strike sites, making it one of the most forensically traceable weapons in the conflict. There is no doubt about attribution. This was a Russian Shahed drone. It struck a Ukrainian nuclear fuel storage facility, and it started a fire meters away from large amounts of nuclear material. The IAEA has recorded more than 160 UAVs around the Chernobyl, Rivne, and South Ukraine nuclear power plants over 2 days in May alone. Drone activity near nuclear facilities has increased dramatically. The IAEA warned that military activity near nuclear sites continues to pose risks. On June 7th, that risk materialized. The international response has been swift and severe, at least in words. The IAEA announced that it would urgently dispatch inspectors to the damaged facility to assess the extent of the destruction. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi described the attack as deeply concerning and a close call for nuclear safety. His exact words: "Attacking a facility with large amounts of nuclear material is like playing with fire, and it must never happen." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the attack an extremely vile Russian strike and stated that Russia used a Shahed attack drone. As of now, there are no readings exceeding normal background radiation levels, but there is certainly an increase in Russia's brazenness, which long ago went off the charts. Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Andriy Sybiha, stated that Russia's actions toward Ukrainian nuclear facilities are systematic, deliberate, and unacceptable, and called for increased international pressure on Russia. Ukraine's general staff placed the attack within what both Energoatom and military officials described as Russia's systematic policy of creating risks for Ukrainian nuclear infrastructure and for Europe as a whole. Energoatom, Ukraine's state nuclear operator, stated, "Once again, Russia continues to act as a terrorist state and nuclear terrorist, disregarding international law and the safety of millions of people." Now here is the detail that I find most telling. Russia has not publicly commented on the alleged attack on the nuclear fuel storage facility. Not a denial, not an admission, not a justification. Silence. In the past, Russia has denied responsibility for strikes on nuclear infrastructure. After the February 2025 strike on the new Safe Confinement, Russia denied responsibility. After previous strikes on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Russia blamed Ukraine. This time, nothing. The silence is not a lack of information. The silence is the information. Russia does not want to draw attention to the fact that its drone struck a nuclear fuel storage facility meters away from large amounts of nuclear material, because there is no good explanation. If Russia claims it was a navigation error, they admit their drones are inaccurate and dangerous. If Russia claims it was a deliberate targeting of nuclear infrastructure, they admit to a war crime. So they say nothing, and the world moves on. But the IAEA is not moving on. Inspectors are on site, the damage is being assessed, and the question of who is responsible is not in doubt. The wreckage of a Shahed drone confirms the attacker. Here is the trap that Russia has created for itself, and for the rest of the world. Russia's strategy of attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure has been consistent throughout the war. They strike power plants, substations, and fuel depots to degrade Ukraine's ability to fight. The Shahed drone has been the primary weapon for this campaign, but nuclear infrastructure is different. Striking a spent fuel storage facility, even a support building, is not the same as striking a power substation. The consequences of a successful strike on a dry cask storage container could be catastrophic. If a Shahed had hit a container holding spent fuel, the explosion could breach the shielding. Radioactive material could be released. The exclusion zone could become contaminated, and the smoke could travel. The IAEA has long warned of the risks of military activity near nuclear sites. The indispensable pillars for nuclear safety and security during a military conflict, established by the IAEA after Russia's full-scale invasion, include the principle that nuclear facilities must not be attacked. Russia is violating that principle, systematically, deliberately. The February 2025 strike on the new Safe Confinement damaged the protective structure in ways that have not been fully repaired. The June 7th strike on the spent fuel storage facility came meters away from nuclear material. What happens next time? The trap is that Russia cannot stop using Shahed drones without losing a critical weapon in its campaign, and Ukraine cannot stop defending against them without leaving its infrastructure vulnerable. But nuclear material does not care about strategy. Nuclear material does not care about whose drone struck which building. Nuclear material only cares about being contained. If the containment fails, the consequences are blind. They do not distinguish between Russian and Ukrainian territory. They do not distinguish between military and civilian populations. The IAEA Director General said it best. Attacking a facility with large amounts of nuclear material is like playing with fire. And if that fire spreads, everyone gets burned. Here's what makes this harder to talk about than it should be. The international community has limited options. Sanctions are already in place. Diplomatic pressure has not stopped the strikes, and the IAEA can only inspect and report. The silence from Moscow is not an admission of guilt. It is an acknowledgement that there is nothing to gain from engaging. Russia does not need to defend its actions because the world has already decided what to think. But the damage to the spent fuel storage facility is real. The fire was extinguished. The radiation levels remain normal, for now. But the precedent has been set. Russia has now struck Chernobyl infrastructure twice. The first time, they damaged the protective shell over the destroyed reactor. The second time, they struck meters from large amounts of nuclear material. The third time, the fourth, the fifth. The IAEA inspectors are on site. They will assess the damage. They will file their reports. They will urge restraint. But restraint requires both sides to participate, and Russia has shown no interest in restraint. The Shahed drone that struck the spent fuel storage facility did not cause a nuclear disaster, but it came close. Close enough that the IAEA Director General called it a close call. Close enough that meters were the difference between a routine fire and a radiological emergency. Next time, the drone might not miss. Next time, the fire might not be extinguished in an hour. Next time, the radiation levels might not remain normal. Russia is playing with fire, and fire, once out of control, does not respect borders. Here is my question for you in the comments. Was the strike on the spent fuel storage facility a deliberate act of nuclear terrorism, a reckless accident from an indiscriminate weapon, or a warning shot designed to test the international response? I read every comment. The best ones I'll address in a follow-up. All sources are linked in the description. CBC News, Reuters, the IAEA, and other verified news outlets confirm the strike details, damage assessment, and international response. If you made it this far, you understand that the next war won't be won by the side with the best missiles. It will be won by the side that understands the difference between targeting a power plant and targeting a nuclear fuel storage facility. That difference is measured in meters, and meters matter. This is war conflict. I'll see you in the next one.